So now we'll work a little bit more on the shoulder and upper arm area. The fingers can just be um, paint weighted, the same as what we were doing with the paint weights and using blend weights on them. And the shoulder area is going to cause us a bit more trouble. Shoulder area can be quite difficult to work with because there's a lot that happens in the shoulder. The arm actually can't be raised above the perpendicular with the clavicle. It's the clavicle that actually raises after that fact, so we don't have to worry about if the arm can deform in an up position. I see a lot of people actually fighting with that, people who haven't done it before, trying to figure out some way of actually getting the arm to go up past the clavicle. Well, that can actually be achieved in the human body and would look really strange if it could. So we just need to note that once the arm is parallel, the clavicle needs to start rotating up. Some of the problems with this character are going to be in the fact that the large neck area, shoulder and back area, the chest area, and everything have to deform properly. What we're going to do is we're going to start by trying to get some of this to work just using the bones that currently exist within the skin modifier, and again, just paint weighting and trying to get some better solutions in it. First thing we should probably fix right off the bat is the head. As you can see, a lot of the jawline is actually just moving immediately with the neck still. So let's correct that as best we can by actually going in and just doing some direct skin weighting on it, not even using the paint weights. I find I'll do this sometimes, like I said, and then use the blend weights to actually blend from one to the other later. So we can just go in and grab the ones that are currently being a bit of a problem. And we'll use the ABS effect and just dial it up to 1 so it all turns red for, oops, not that bone, however, the head bone. We can also set it up for the right around the head. I'll go into the left viewport here. Oops. And directly weight some of the ear area up as well. And let's mirror some of those weights over to the other side. So we're going to mirror the green to blue, so green to blue verts. So they get them all onto the other side. Now the head will be tearing away from the body a bit. But like I said, we're not going to worry about that for now until we actually start weighting up right up into the neck. Let's try and get some of the shoulder working a bit better. As you can see, it's really starting to rip apart. That's probably because the upper arm envelope here, the first twist bone in the arm, has way too much effect, and the clavicle should be taking some of the effect in here, and just isn't. So again, just using paint weights, we're just going to go in, paint some of that up. I'll set the weight up a little bit higher. And we can weight some of this a bit more into the clavicle area and then check and see what we've got going. And you can see that there's a lot of ripping and tearing still going on. The arm actually can't bend directly backwards that far either. So again, make sure that when you're skinning, you're not actually skinning for things that can't happen in animation, or shouldn't be happening anyways. It's always good to have a little bit of uh, extra latitude in how you can deform the characters, because it's often you're posing the character for the camera and you're not actually posing the character for something that's sort of possible. So we're going to weight in some of these areas here as well, in the front of the chest and everything, to be driven by part of the clavicle right now, and over the top of the arm. But what you're going to find is that a lot of this isn't going to help you a lot in a character like this. You can weight this all you like to the clavicle, but it's never going to be quite what you're looking for. What we're actually going to do is we're going to add some extra bones in, and to help try and drive some of the areas that are going to become a problem. One of the biggest problems is going to be the neck area down here, this large muscle that follows from the head down into the shoulder. This is going to be a bit of a problem, so we're going to stick a stretchy bone in there, as well as the chest. When the arm moves forward, we need to move this whole mass in and crush this whole mass forward without actually having it collapse inward, but actually have it sort of, pull tight as a muscle would across the front of the chest. Just get a bit more of the arm done, and then maybe we'll even do a quick blend weights on it to blend some of this together to get it a bit closer. Go into blend weights and maybe about a 3 or 4. We'll go around and actually just soften some of these weights up a bit more. Even them out. One of the things I think we were having problems with is a bit of the twist on the upper arm as well. You can see that it's not being driven very well at all. So this is going to need some serious work when it comes to weighting up the arm as well. Oops. And see, that's where the problem is, using way too much weight. Tend to want to do it in small amounts. Try and get that twist working a bit better. There are actually some really good scripted utilities available on sites like scriptspot.com and others that have further tools for skinning. Some that work very well are edge loop and ring selection tools for selecting the vertices. A lot of this now is built in as well to Max 7 in some of the new tool sets, which helps a lot. Okay, so we have a bit better solution going on in the shoulder area. It certainly isn't perfect yet, as it takes a long time. Here's one thing we can work on right off the bat, is that the arm is pulling up on and part of this muscle structure here. This should be weighted into part of the back for now, because we have nothing else to weight it down to pull it back down. So we should probably actually fix that for now as well. Make sure that the arm, the shoulder area isn't pulling on this as much as it currently is. So, get that looking a little closer right now. Again, like I say, it's very time consuming. I won't be able to skin this character perfectly in the time for this DVD. but hopefully I'll have a somewhat skinned version as a demonstration as to what can be achieved with skin for the end of the DVD. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit better. Have some oddities going in the top here we need to solve. I think I've actually got the position of the arm going too high anyways during the animation, and it's certainly making it look a little odd as well. But I think a bit more weight in our first twist bone will help put some volume back in the top of the arm. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to put in a couple of extra bones. Sorry, something I should point out right away. I've accidentally painted in weight in here. Paint blend weights will get rid of that. You can also hold down Alt and it's negative paint weight, so it's actually painting the weight out. Again, just like in grabbing the ABS effect and spinning it down, the weight of that vertex has now been added into any other bones evenly that was currently affecting it before. So let's actually build a couple of new bones now. We'll set them up as stretchy bones in the character's neck and in the character's chest. So in create bones, I'm going to make them smaller to the size of 1. And this bone is actually going to follow the neck muscle. And we're going to need to use the bone tools, bone edit mode, just so we can stretch the muscle in the right place. So I'm going to call this a muscle bone for now. Work in local mode. And we'll say that's pretty good for now. And let's add one in the chest. We're going to add one right across the chest here, in the front of the chest. Put it just underneath the skin. And we'll carry that through up into the front of the shoulder. Now what's going to happen here is I'm just going to make sure that I reset the stretch on these. We're going to set both these up as a squash and stretch bone. So I'm going to turn on squash and stretch now so that when they actually stretch, they'll actually get fatter and thinner. The way we're going to set it up is for the neck bone, this end will be parented down to and following the rotations of the clavicle, and the end bone will be following the rotations of the head bone. For the chest muscle bone, this end will be parented, and it probably should be biased between these two a bit, following both of the rotations a little bit. We can use that with another point helper and some constraints. And then this end will follow the clavicle again. So to set these up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a simple system of constraints, just like we did in the spinal column. I'm going to use the pen rigging utils just to make fast work of it. I want to select both bones, make point helpers, and it's going to drop a point helper into each one. You can make those by hand and just align them. To set the rig up then, we'll do the neck first. Take the bone that's going to stretch and I'm going to make it look at the point helper that's up at the child end of it. So I'm going to set a look at constraint on it, point it at it. I don't particularly like the view line length being on, so I tend to get rid of that. Set the up node vector to be the up node to be the point helper that's at the root of the bone chain, so that this object will handle any twist and twist that bone. And then all you need to do is set the nub bone to have a position constraint and position constrain it up to the nub bone up at the child end. And what you've got now is you've got a squash and stretch bone set up. Nice and simple. Controlled by the two point helpers. I'm going to use link, and I want to link the point helper at the end up to the head bone, and the one down at the root, I'm going to link that to the clavicle. Now for the one in the chest, same thing. So pick the one in the main bone. Look at constraint to the point helper. Set the up node. And position constrain the nub bone, and once again, nice stretchy bone. Child end's going to get linked to, child end's going to get linked up to clavicle, and we'll just directly link this up into the spine right now, and we'll say this will be linked into that spinal bone. So now when the arm raises, you can see those bones stretch. Oops, we didn't parent the end of the root bones. So the root bone should actually get parented back to the point helper at the end as well, of course. Point helper at the end, there we go. So now it'll lift. And we get a nice stretchy bone in the neck and across the chest. And this is going to help with the skinning across the chest when the arm moves forward as well. When the clavicle rotates. Oops, we have bone edit mode still on. So nothing was working. So now you can see the chest bone collapsing, neck bone working nice. And we can even add them down through the back. In areas to drive other muscle systems. You can use these for biceps, down in the forearms. You can use them just about anywhere to allow you a little bit better skinning. So now that we've added those, one of the nice things about Max is adding new bones to the skin modifier is just simply as easy as saying add bone. And simply go in and add them. Now, since we've already baked weights, the envelopes aren't going to have any effect whatsoever, so you can see that they're simply not doing anything. In fact, since we're not using the envelopes at all anymore, I'm going to the display rollout. I want to say show no envelopes and just turn them off completely, just so I see the where the envelope is, but I don't have to look at all the gizmos around them. Simplifies our display a little bit. Now what you can do is you can actually start painting some weights into areas to get this to work a bit better. So get to the point where it lifts. Let's go in and actually do some paint weights on this now and start painting in some weight for this muscle. Seem to be getting a bit of the ear there, but I'll correct that later when I go back up to the head. So I should be able to get some nice movement now. As the head rotates, you can actually see that muscle starting to take effect and actually looking like it contracts a bit. When the arm lifts as well, and the clavicle goes up, it actually compresses it nicely up out of the way as well. This isn't giving us a really nice feel to it. Just do a bit of blending there and blend some of those weights again. Just to even them out. And so you can see now we have a nice muscle working across the top of the shoulder, pulling that tight. We have to work on the weights a bit there as well, just get the exact settings that we need. Same thing for the chest. Right now when the arm lifts, you can see that some of this is moving and sort of rotating with the clavicle where I've weighted it off to the clavicle. And it kind of looks okay, but if I were to weight it all the way down here just to the clavicle, it would start moving very strangely because the whole character would, when it bends over, this wouldn't be moving enough with the spinal column. With this stretch bone in here, we can actually weight off to the stretch bone a bit, and we'll get a nice fall off again to the character. Whoops. We have that weight set very high. So what's nice about this now is the very top of the muscle will move more with the clavicle and then stretch down and start moving with some of the spinal column now, because the other end of the stretch bone is parented into the spine. Whereas if it was just all weighted to the clavicle, it would just move with the clavicle, which is parented right up to the top of the spine, which would start looking very strange. So once again now, as the arm moves up and down, you can see that the muscle looks more like it's moving in a bit more of a natural direction with that. With that muscle bone. And it'll naturally do a little bit of squash and stretch as well. Let's take it back down to the pose here. Now let's try some forward and back poses with it. And you can see that we're getting a much nicer deformation in the neck and in the chest just by adding a couple of quick little bones. So you can see how fast that's actually made short work of trying to get some of that skinning muscle area in there to looking correct and actually pushing some of it out of the way. We should be able to get the arm to move a long way forward. The other thing you could do actually to make this a little bit more natural is when the arm moves forward and the clavicle stays where it is, it bunches up some in the front here as well. So we could have actually parented this up to the twist bone or near the twist bone, so it actually does a bit of compression as well when the arm moves forward. So to test that out, you could just simply try linking it into the twist bone and see what you get. Do it again. I'm going to do it at frame 0. I wasn't at frame 0, so I may have changed the way that, yeah. So you can see now where the current placement of that bone is. I'm getting a lot of stretch in the top. And it might be too much. So what we can do is we can actually move the placement of the child end of that stretch bone so it doesn't stretch as much with the arm as the arm goes back. It doesn't look too bad. But here's one of the beauties of the always deform. I can just turn off always deform. Go in and pick the child end of this bone. I'll move it in a bit closer so it doesn't move quite as far with it. And I can even still go in and test it now and see how much it's actually having an effect. Closer I get it to the pivot, of course, of the and I'll set it up so it actually is right on top of it. Closer I get it to the pivot, of course, the less it's actually going to rotate with it. So adjusting where your bones lie in Max is really easy with the skin modifier. It's just a matter of just turning off the always deform, finding the best solution for it, and then make sure you turn always deform back on in case you want to animate it frame 0. So there's a solution that's working pretty good. We need now to make sure that these bones are in the exact same spot on the opposite side as well. This is really important. so that when we do the mirror, we're going to get a proper mirror. So that's just done the same way that we normally would with a rig. One of the other things I'm going to do is, because I move this around, I may have stretched it some. I'm going to turn off Always Deform again and push the reset stretch, and you saw the bone pop there quickly, just to make sure that everything's set at a default pose again. So that'll help a lot. Like I said, one of the things you can do is add stretch bones down the back muscles. And as well, we'll use them in the face in DVD4 as well, doing facial rigs. We could actually add them into the stomach area. We could add them into the leg areas. So you can see it's already starting to give some nice flexing going on in areas that we weren't getting it before. And it's starting to look like there's some muscle movement happening right across the chest. Even the nipple of the character is moving a little bit now. And this should start looking a lot more natural once we also move around the rest of the character. We'll start getting some far more natural deformations as the spinal column moves and bends and flexes as well. And like I said, one of the things we might want to do is actually weight this point helper here. Instead of directly just to the one of the spinal joints, we might want to actually weight it between them with some constraints, and that might help as well.